have the honor and the pleasure to have with us Mr. Skau, who is the Deputy Executive Director of the World Food Programme.
Great to be with you. It's actually my first time here, and on top of it, to be here in person, but of course heard many times about this great opportunity to engage with media, with the press on humanitarian concerns across. So I wish the circumstances were better, but really glad to be with you for this exchange. And I will, really want to draw attention to the escalating humanitarian fallout from the conflict in the Middle East, which is growing more concerning by the day. And I saw this first hand in Beirut last week when I visited. Lebanon is really, I guess you can say, the epicenter of the humanitarian or the most immediate humanitarian fallout of this conflict. There is great uncertainty on the ground. Everyone I met was desperate to know how and when this will end. I landed midweek at the start of that major escalation of hostilities, and for the entire visit there were evacuation orders and airstrikes across the city and also in southern Lebanon. Intense military activity that has now driven massive displacements in just a few days. The government estimates, as I'm sure you heard from Ramis this morning, over 830,000 people. And these are now rising, people having fled their homes. Many of them that I met and spoke to had been displaced before. They had not managed to recover from that displacement in 24, and so now they really have no margins to cope. They have really been floored by the scale and the speed of this escalation of hostilities. The government has been leading an immediate and large-scale humanitarian response to stabilize the situation. Hundreds of dedicated shelters have been opened and schools have been repurposed as makeshift shelters. The World Food Programme and others have also then scaled up to support these efforts and to contribute to the humanitarian response. We are providing food, hot meals and bread to over 250 shelters, to tens of thousands of people, and also providing cash assistance to now over 200,000 people who have been displaced. And we do this through the government social safety net system that we have been there helping also the government to set up. But what we have achieved in these past couple of weeks is very fragile. To sustain this response in Lebanon and to contain, frankly, an even greater crisis from spreading, we now need donors to step up the way they did in 2024, I should say, but what we've not seen so far in this crisis. The Secretary General announced, as I'm sure you're aware, a flash appeal for $308 million in new funding for the UN's Lebanon operation to provide life-saving assistance and protection. And we at WFP are specifically asking for $77 million over the next 3 months to sustain these vital programs that I just spoke to. But beyond the immediate fallout in Lebanon, the conflict has also caused major knock-on effects on global humanitarian operations. And as you know, we are the cluster lead on logistics, so we are really feeling the pain on this. Our supply chains may really be on the brink of the most severe disruption since COVID and the Ukraine war back in 2022. Our shipments of life-saving food are being affected by the squeeze on trade. It is taking us longer to deliver by sea, and our costs have increased. In the Strait of Hormuz, humanitarian shipping has already been restricted on account of security risks. Maritime operators are also becoming more risk-averse, and many are rerouting vessels to avoid the Bab el-Mandeb. This has brought further delays and higher shipping costs to all our operations across the world. In one case, a recent rice shipment from India to Port Sudan was required to take a 25-day detour, some 9,000 kilometers around the Cape of Good Hope to avoid traveling through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So humanitarian supply chains into Afghanistan has also been affected. as it has become too dangerous to deliver through the Iran corridor or through what was usually the corridor from Pakistan. This has added to existing supply chain difficulties as I said, as the Pakistan-Afghanistan border also closed in October 2024. WFP has adapted to supply chain disruptions where we can to keep Afghanistan supplied. For example, we're now delivering through an alternative route through Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and then over the Caspian Sea and Turkmenistan. But I think this just illustrates how complex now these deliveries have become. And in Lebanon and in Iran, we are distributing now more cash assistance instead of food rations where markets are functioning. But there is only so much we can control, and WFP's operating costs have now jumped up as a result of the disruption. Our shipping costs are up 18% so far, and we have thousands of trucks on the roads every day, and these are now running on much more expensive fuel due to the oil prices. Higher costs mean that we can buy less food or provide less cash to beneficiaries. Before this crisis, we were already stretching our funds to the limit, so you can just imagine the burden this adds. We have been forced to cut life-saving food rations for people in famine conditions in Sudan. We are only able to support 1 in 4 acutely malnourished children in Afghanistan, which is now the world's worst malnutrition crisis. And I think this just exemplifies that already before, we were in a really tight space, and now then being able to spend less on the people we serve and more on ourselves because of these higher costs is really a major challenge for us. We also have new analysis that suggests that the Middle East conflict could have an even more severe impact on global hunger that goes beyond the immediate humanitarian impact, but also these disruptions to humanitarian operations across. Of immediate concern, global fertilizer markets are now being disrupted just as sub-Saharan Africa heads into a planting season. Fertilizer flows through the Strait of Hormuz, which is now at a virtual standstill. And some 25% of the world's supply comes through this channel. This is a major risk to countries such like Somalia and Kenya, which depend on Gulf imports of their fertilizers. There it's more than 25%, it's beyond 30% of that fertilizer coming from the Gulf. A reduction in fertilizer supply will increase input costs for farmers, and in turn that will mean lower farming yields overall. In the worst case, this means lower yields and crop failures next season. In the best case, higher input costs will be included in food prices next year. That is better than widespread crop failures, of course, but price rises will be passed on to ordinary families who often are already struggling. The oil shocks will also transmit quickly into food price inflation, particularly in import-dependent economies, as energy is a critical input to agriculture systems. So taken together, the spike in global food and fuel costs could leave millions of families priced out of stable foods, particularly in import-dependent countries like sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. In fact, our analysis projects that if the Middle East conflict continues through June, an additional 45 million people could be pushed into acute hunger by price rises. This would take global hunger levels to an all-time record, and it's a terrible, terrible prospect. This just reinforces the importance of de-escalation to this conflict. The consequences are falling on the world's most vulnerable people who are already living in dire conditions. They do not have the margins to cope with a new jump in living costs. All those with influence must now step up and protect them. It is vital to contain the knock-on effects of this crisis and to make more resources available for the humanitarian response to the crisis.